Hey guys, this is Ben at Tilmor, and today we have some oil change upgrades. And basically we did this because we understand that it can be kind of messy and time consuming to change the oil on the 520 tractor. So the first things we upgraded was the shield. And this shield, it's the lower engine shield, and it sits right behind the driver. And what we upgraded here, we added a couple new notches, but this notch right here is where the oil filter's at, and it allows you to remove the oil filter without taking this shield off. So it's one less step. Then over here we have the remote drain tube. If you watch the other videos, you understand when you take the plug out, the oil, it tends to go everywhere. And we wanted to change that. So this is what your kit's going to come with. It's going to come with the new the tube, a fitting, a bracket, a jam nut, banjo bolt, some sealing washers, and a cap. This cap will go right on there. Comes with a spacer and just some new hardware. This kit covers your tractor if it has a road package or if it doesn't have a road package. If you don't have a road package, just disregard this bolt right here. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to mock it up. That way you guys understand what it's supposed to look like under there. So this fitting will slide through here. This jam nut threads on the bottom of here just like this. We're not going to make anything tight. We're just going to snug it up so it's all movable under there. Once you get that in there like that, thread your hose on there, and then your banjo bolt. This banjo bolt is actually what's going to thread right into the bottom of the pan. It does have different size washers. The big washer with the bigger center is going to slide on first, and it will slide through the hose, and then that washer sits just like that. And then this cap will end up right here. It'll look just like that. And then once it's under there and you get everything all tightened up, you want to take note of this hose. You want it to be facing down just a little bit, either flat or down. You don't want it facing going uphill, and the oil is going to struggle to run out. You're not going to be able to drain all the oil out of the engine then. This spacer right here, it will end up going right there just like that. So that's what it's going to look like down under the tractor. All right, let's go put it on. Before we get down under the tractor and install the remote drain tube, we're going to go ahead and update this shield right here. When removing this shield, you're going to want to grab it and slide it. Pull this tube, the vent tube here for the hydraulics, kind of pull it up out of the way and slide your shield back in behind that, and then it'll come right up out of there. Now take your new shield, just slide it down in there, and again, pull that vent tube kind of out of the way so it stays on this side of it. Just slide it down in there. And start your bolts by hand. we've updated this shield, and if you look down here, now we can access that oil filter without pulling that shield off. All right, let's go put the drain tube on. Now that we're down here under the tractor, first thing we're gonna wanna do is, you notice this tractor does have the road package plug under here. So let's go ahead and get that removed. Go ahead and unplug it. Just save all your hardware. All right, now that we got that plug out of the way, first what you're gonna wanna do is you're gonna wanna remove your drain plug, drain all the oil. I would recommend letting this tractor sit for quite a while before you start to put this hose on it. This tractor has actually sat overnight and it is still dripping oil. I keep wiping it off, but go ahead and just kind of let it sit, let it drain, wipe it all up, get it as good as you can, and then go ahead and let's stick our remote drain tube on. I mocked it up there on the table, and that's what we're gonna just kind of leave it all mocked up and stick it up on there. Remember, make sure that your brass washers there are on. Make sure they're on correctly. And let's go ahead and let's stick it up in there. It is kind of challenging. You're kind of going to have to do it by feel. That banjo bolt where the washers are is what I'm threading into the pan. Just threading it in by hand, and then we'll go ahead and snug it up with some wrenches. That is snugged up there in this little bracket. We're going to have to remove that bolt, and that's going to use a 3/8 socket. It is going to have a nut on the back side, so catch that nut. Remove that, and this is where some of the new hardware is going to come into place. Now we're going to use the 1-inch long SF headed bolt. So let's stick our bracket up there and stick that 1-inch long bolt through there like that. And start the nut on the back side. Just like most of our videos, we're gonna just make everything finger tight. Get it all started, make sure everything's in place before we start tightening anything up. Now what we're going to want is, what I'm actually going to recommend you guys doing is, let's put it on before we put the plug on. So you got to slide your spacer up in behind this red plate and in between that bracket. So start the bolt and the spacer and line the bracket. Get the nut on the back side. And you can snug those bolts up. And now what we're going to want to do is start tightening everything up. I actually have a 3/4 ratchet wrench to tighten up the banjo bolt. And I'm going to hold it angled down slightly. And okay. So we got that one tightened. As you can see that the hose is angled down just a little bit. And then what we're going to do is we're actually going to take this bolt out, slide our plug in, and then we'll get it all fastened in there, tightened up, so our hose is not contacting the plug here. So let's remove this bolt. And I believe the spacer is probably going to fall out. Maybe it'll hold it in there. Nope, it's gonna fall out. So, all right, let's go ahead and let's get our plug in there. And like I said, if your tractor doesn't have a road package, it's actually a little bit easier to install this because you don't have to mess with this plug. But if your tractor does have it, you can still reuse this remote drain tube. So it's in there. Go ahead and get one of your existing 1/4-inch bolts with flat washers and put it on the right side of the plug. Let's get that tightened up. And this is where this long 1.25-inch bolt is going to come in. So grab a flat washer on that bolt, grab your SF nut, and here's the spacer. We'll slide the spacer up through. Just like that. And those bolts are going to take a 7/16 socket. Let's go ahead and tighten those up. Go ahead and plug those in. And now what we want to do is we want to get this hose angled correctly. We want to get this jam nut locked down. But basically when you're tightening it up, you don't want to put it into a bind. Don't want to kink the hose. Don't want to tighten it so it's pushing down on this wire. Just make sure everything it's flowing nicely and it's not making contact with anything it's not supposed to. So the fitting, you're going to want to hold that fitting with a 9/16 wrench, and the jam nut is a 13/16. So you're going to want to come in here and put the wrench to hold the fitting like that, and then use a 13/16 to tighten that jam nut. You're going to want to get that pretty tight because you don't want that jam nut or that fitting to spin when you're taking this cap off. And then you're going to want to take an 11/16 wrench, and then we're going to want to tighten this hose onto the fitting. And you're kind of going to just have to get your hand up in there and hold that hose while you're tightening the fitting, tightening the nut on the fitting. All right, and once you get everything good and tight, you can go back through and check them all just to make sure everything is good and tight. Okay, that one's good and tight. And that tightening the banjo bolt is with a 3/4 ratchet wrench. And then you're going to want to make sure the nut on the end of the hose is good and tight, and that is with an 11/16. And then grab your 9/16 and your 13/16 and hold the 9/16 on the fitting so it doesn't turn as you crank on the jam nut. All right, that is good and tight. And wipe it all down. Go and make sure that all these bolts are good and tight with 7/16. And the 3/8. And then after you've done that, you're ready to tighten this cap. All right, that is installing all the upgrades for the oil change kits on your Tilmor 520 tractor. After you've added oil to the tractor, run it, check the oil, then get it all cleaned up and make sure you check for leaks. Make sure everything's good and tight. You guys should be good to go. Next time you change your oil, it'll be a whole lot simpler. If you guys have any questions or need anything else, please reach out.